Deebo wants out. Today we explore which teams will be the best landing spots for him and how that'll affect his fantasy value. Welcome back to the Kick and Post YouTube channel. So Deebo Samuel of the 49ers requested a trade today. Unhappy with his financial situation based on what reports are saying. He wants $25 million a year after 3 years in the league, finishing as the wide receiver 3 overall in fantasy. But it's not really about fantasy value when we look at a guy like Deebo. It's kind of the aggression he brings to the field, the brutality he brings when he plays, and how he kind of gives the 49ers that sense of toughness when he plays. So it'll be interesting to see where he'll land. But today I figured I'd hop on and give you guys a few landing spots that are, in my opinion, very likely. Unfortunately, we've heard that the Niners are looking for a King's Haul, like a ransom type of trade for him. So I'm not sure if they'll be able to get a deal done. Or maybe it's not so unfortunate they won't be able to get a deal done. But to kick the video off, I feel like a guy like Deebo landing in Kansas City would be a good position for him. Kansas City has 2 first-round picks. I do believe it will be possible for them to trade one, maybe a future first as well. If they feel like throwing it all on the table, maybe trading both first-round picks. I don't see how that would be very beneficial, seeing that they just gave up Tyreek Hill in a deal to Miami to acquire all these picks. It would be kind of a sideways move to trade Tyreek Hill because they didn't want to pay him, and then acquire Deebo Samuel and pay him the contract that he's asking for. But in a perfect world, let's say he goes to Kansas City. Deebo's ADP right now, according to Sleeper, he's the 39th player off the board in Superflex leagues. So we're looking at, in a 12-team league, that's back into the third, early fourth. In a single quarterback league, he's projected as the 26th player off the board. So we're looking at middling third round pick in single quarterback, right? So I believe if he ends up on the Kansas City Chiefs, his ADP will climb drastically. We're talking probably early second round pick if he ends up going to the Chiefs. In Superflex, definitely mid second round to early third round pick easily. ADP would climb. That's my estimation. He'd bring a sense of toughness to the Chiefs that I feel like they haven't had since this era of football. I don't think the Chiefs have really had a tough era of football since like the Jamal Charles days, but he'll bring a certain toughness. Andy Reid will bring the best out of him. That wide back position that, according to recent reports, he's not really enjoying that tag. He wants to go strictly back to being a wide receiver. But let's say he goes to the Chiefs. I feel like they would move him all over the field. The backfield is not a point of emphasis for the Chiefs. Adding Ronald Jones in the offseason, still having CEH, they could still have some room to grow there. And again, adding his toughness to that room will be very beneficial for the Chiefs. At that ADP, I would be buying on Deebo Samuel. I would acquire him if he became the Chiefs' number 1 wide receiver this offseason. But unfortunately, based on the asking price, I do not see him landing there. So this is kind of a pipe dream. So I decided to get that one out the way as quick as possible. Right? But hopping into the next team, I see him being on, possibly. We're going to go Green Bay Packers. Now, the Green Bay Packers also have 2 back-end first-round picks. The Green Bay Packers have Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay Packers had to deal with Deebo in the playoffs last year, which, quite honestly, he was the reason they lost that game against San Francisco because he bullied them. On a snowy night in Green Bay, the Green Bay Packers couldn't get anything going outside of Devontae Adams, and Deebo Samuel ran the ball down their throats, and insane yak yardage when he did catch, little short passes over the middle from Jimmy Garoppolo. Right, so I feel like in a place like Green Bay, he would bring that toughness. He fits the mantra, in my opinion, of Green Bay. Would be a great replacement for Devontae Adams, who recently moved on to be in Las Vegas to play with his former college teammate Derek Carr. Right, he went out and got his bag in Las Vegas, so it'd be pretty cool for them to bring in a guy like Deebo. Maybe give up those 2 back end first. Finally acquire a wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers outside of Devontae Adams. Are they willing to pay him? I don't think they have the money, so that's the stipulation right there. But if he was to be acquired by Green Bay for those picks, and he'd be willing to work the contract out, I do believe this is another position where his ADP would skyrocket. We're talking, again, same kind of range. Number one receiver for Aaron Rodgers is almost as valuable as the number one receiver for Patrick Mahomes. So we're looking middling second round pick, maybe early third. And at that price point, I am buying in fantasy if he lands in any of those positions. Um, Again, a bit of a pipe dream, but if he landed in Green Bay, it would be solid for fantasy, solid for Green Bay, but I do not see it happening. So we're checking that off as another place where I do not see him landing. Right? Let's hop into third spot that I like for him the most. Arizona Cardinals recently lost Christian Kirk to the Jags, 4 years, $72 million. Again, not a fan of the base deal, but to be honest, this base deal is what kind of stirred all this trouble in the wide receiver market. So maybe it was a big brain play by the Jags. Who knows? But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. They lost Christian Kirk to the Jags. Re-signed AJ Green recently. I think it was this week. 1 year, $8.3 million. So we're talking an aging AJ Green. D Hop still on contract. Re-signed Zach Ertz. Rondale Moore, who's a youngster, speedster type wide receiver that they're still trying to get acclimated. Unfortunately, if they went out and acquired Deebo, we're talking the stunting of Rondale Moore's growth in the league, which would hurt me a bit because he is one of those players I'm rooting for. But for the Cardinals, again, brings that sense of toughness that I feel like they didn't have last year. James Conner does kind of run with a little bit of brutality, but I am still worried about his health in the long term. He had his issues in Pittsburgh. I don't think we're past those days yet, but Deebo would bring a lot of toughness to that team that seems to struggle with that a bit. Again, another situation where if he lands there, ADP climbs. I don't see how it doesn't. Playing for Kyler, playing for that high-flying offense, they'd get the ball in his hands a lot, use him as a weapon. ADP middling of the second again is what I see it being. He would climb, and at that price point with Arizona, I would buy again. Deebo in a solid offense, I'm all about it, right? But again, they have a lot of money tied up to D Hop, re-signing Zach Ertz, Kyler Murray trying to get a new deal. He's disgruntled with the organization right now. So, in a perfect world, in a perfect storm, that would be a good landing spot for Deebo. But most likely, we're looking at they won't be able to pay him, which seems to be a lot of the reason he's requesting this trade. So, again, even though it's a pipe dream, I do not see him landing in Arizona, but it would be nice, and I would acquire if the ADP climbed. On to the spot where I do think he lands. Jets, Jets. The Jets have been very vocal about their aspirations to acquire a true number one wide receiver this offseason. They've been tied to DK Metcalf. They were down in the running with that Tyreek Hill deal. It was them in Miami, but they weren't able to muster up the deal to acquire to acquire Tyreek Hill. And even though they don't have multitude of first-round picks, or they don't plan to deal a multitude of first-round picks, they do still have pretty close proximity picks, like the 38th pick and I think the 43rd pick in the second round. So that could be something they pair together. Maybe they could give up 2 seconds and a future first for Deebo. They would be willing to pay that contract. Zach Wilson, his former coach Robert Saleh, even though he was the coach on the defensive side, definitely knows quite a bit of what it's like to have Deebo Samuel in that locker room, the toughness he brings. It would stunt Elijah Moore's growth a little bit, which would be unfortunate, but maybe he could thrive as a nice secondary option. I think it would be a huge benefit to a player like Zach Wilson, who could benefit a lot from having a receiver that short yard passes could be turned into 20, 30-yard gains with his yak ability. This is the landing spot that I see him going. Number one wide receiver for the Jets. Unfortunately, I feel like his ADP would fall as compared to him being on the Niners. And with his ADP falling, look, I don't like offensive players on the Jets, but I am willing to give this a shot, right? I've seen enough of Deebo. I've seen enough of Zach Wilson where I feel like he's accurate enough to get Deebo the ball. And I would take a shot if his ADP fell. Now, if his ADP climbed from this move, which I don't really see being a possibility, then I'd have to think otherwise. But as of now, if he lands with the Jets, King's ransom gets paid, I'm willing to take the shot on a later round pick, Deebo Samuel, than what his ADP would be if he landed on one of these prestigious offenses. But last but not least, the spot that isn't getting talked about enough, in my opinion, are the Niners. They don't want to deal Deebo. They know how to use Deebo. Maybe they could talk him into staying. Maybe they could work out a contract, stop using him as a running back, because they do have Elijah Mitchell. They do have Trey Sermon. And if that is the real contention on why he doesn't want to stay there, we could fix that. We could repair it. ADP currently, like I said before, 39th player off the board in Superflex leagues, 26th player off the board in single quarterback leagues. If he stays at that position and he stays on the Niners, getting paired up with Trey Lance, who's projected to start, I love that, and I would acquire him at that ADP. But based on how things are going, it looks like he's out the door. And in a final prediction, I see him being a Jet, probably on draft night, probably will get dealt, and then we'll be looking into the Niners acquiring a new wide receiver, or Brandon Ayuk's ADP skyrocketing. They've already been tied to a love of Christian Watson. He is a raw product, but 6'4", blazing speed, super tall. I don't think he will be there for them in the second round, so they would have to acquire a first-round pick to go out and get the guy they like. But again, if he lands in any of these spots, it's sounding like a first-round pick will have to be a part of the deal. I'd like to thank y'all for tuning in, hearing my thoughts on where Deebo will go. Hopefully in the upcoming days, we'll get some resolution to this situation. Maybe on the draft night, we'll have a resolution to the situation. We have our second part of our mock round draft dropping in hopefully a week or less. Me and Chris are going to get on the video and get this thing sorted out for y'all. We gave y'all picks 1 through 16. Go ahead and tune into that. But 17 through 32 coming up soon. All right? This has been Kick and Post, and thank you for watching.